Hi, everyone. Welcome to Textile Talks. I'm Emma Parker. I'm the Oral History Project Manager at the Quilt Alliance. Thank you so much for joining us today. We're so glad you're here. You're welcome to tell us where you're joining from today in the chat so we can see where our audience is. I am joining from beautiful Durham, North Carolina. It's a beautiful day today. I haven't actually been outside recently, but I think it's a beautiful day. Many of you know that Textile Talks is a weekly series presented on Wednesdays, every Wednesday, except for the holidays at 2 p.m. Eastern in partnership with the Quilt Alliance and our 3 partner organizations shown here. All of our Textile Talks are recorded and they're available via YouTube. So if you've missed the past, over 100 now, you can watch them on YouTube. And thanks so much to our sponsors who you just saw, and donors like you. All of these Textile Talks are totally free. And we intend to keep it that way. So we will put the link in the chat now for our donation page if you'd like to consider making a contribution. And we thank you in advance for your support. For those of you who don't know us, the Quilt Alliance's mission is to document, preserve, and share the stories of quilts and quilt makers. You can find more about us and all of our projects, events, and resources, and everything I'm talking about today on our website at www.quiltalliance.org. Today, we're going to talk about one of our most recently launched efforts, which is our 30th anniversary block of the month. And I'm going to talk a little bit about this project and why we chose it. And then we're going to hear from our board president, Laura Hopper, who is spearheading the project, and 2 of the designers who created blocks for our block of the month. First, just a little housekeeping. You can use the chat box for greetings, comments, and technical help. We ask that you reserve the Q&A to enter your questions for our speakers, so that just helps questions not get lost. When you do send a chat, you can select whether you'd like to send it just to the panelists, the people speaking, or to everyone. So if you want to share your question or your comment with all of our audience today, you can put it in the chat box. You can also turn live captioning on and off by clicking the live transcript or CC button on your Zoom controls. If you're on a phone, you may need to leave the meeting and access the settings in your Zoom app. Whoops. As I mentioned, the Quilt Alliance is a national nonprofit whose mission is to document the stories of quilts and their makers. We do this through oral history projects, education about quilt labeling. We have in-person and virtual events. We travel to visit groups and guilds and more. And in 2023, we are celebrating 30 years, that's 3 decades of this work. Since the organization was founded in 1993, and you can see some photos and maybe some familiar faces in these from the past 30 years here, we have collected interviews with more than 2,000 quilt makers, from first prize winners at major international shows to my favorite is a 7-year-old who had just made his first quilt. So you'll see in our collection of interviews, lots of names you know, but also lots of names you've never heard. Just quilters, not just quilters, amazing quilters who are living in communities around the country and around the world. There are both ordinary stories there and extraordinary stories about quilting and how it impacts our life. And to top it off, S.O.S, which is our flagship oral history project, is relaunching this year with an updated, streamlined guidelines for how to conduct the interviews. And that project is archived at the Library of Congress's American Folklife Center. So I think that really speaks volumes to how valued and important the collection is, that the United States' most celebrated library decided that it was worth the resources to archive this collection. So I encourage you to check out our oral history recordings online. They're at qsos.quiltalliance.org, and also watch our videos of one person talking about one quilt for 3 minutes. Those are called Go Tell It videos on our YouTube channel. So my colleague Amy will share links to both in the chat. So once we realized that we were turning 30 this year, which I guess we've known for 30 years, but we really started thinking about how we wanted to celebrate. And we knew we wanted to highlight our projects, but also launch something that would be community-minded and help raise funds and bring the Quilt Alliance to a wide audience. Our board co-president, Laura Hopper, who you're going to hear from in a few minutes, had the brilliant idea of doing a block of the month. And as an organization in the past, we've typically been more focused on documentation and personal quilt histories than actually teaching quilt making techniques. And we have a staff of 3. 2 of us are part-time, and even though we've all made quilts, we're certainly not experts or master quilters ourselves. So the project felt a little daunting. But we realized that we have interviewed many talented quilters and quilt designers over the past 30 years. So we thought we'd ask them to help us out as kind of a birthday gift. So we asked 9 very different quilters who you see here, and each of them in the past has been interviewed or participated in a Quilt Alliance project, including a S.O.S oral history interview with almost all of them, or a Go Tell It video about one quilt that they've made, or they were featured on our interview show where we also did studio tours, which was called Story Bee. So we have interviews with all these designers, and they all created a block for our 9-block block of the month. So we are releasing 1 block a month, along with tips and tricks from the designer, and a video of them talking about their block. And the first block just came out in April by Ricky Timms. The blocks are all very different. There's an improv block that has no pattern really. That's by Zach Foster. There are several blocks that skew more traditional. There is a block that's paper piecing, but a very good beginner paper piecing block. And I think this is really important because when we do our documentation work, we're interested in every kind of quilter. So we wanted to create a project that reflected that diversity of style, even though it's impossible to represent every little niche of the quilt making world. So if you sign up, which you can do if you join the Quilt Alliance or make a donation of $30 or more, and no matter when you sign up, you'll get all 9 blocks, but you can make as few or as many of the blocks as you want. And I'll share a little bit more about how you sign up after we hear from our designers. Another reason that this project was really appealing is that it's a kind of a community project, a block of the month, quilt along, sew along. It's a community project that happens in the virtual age. We can all make the same block every month and our quilts will look totally different. And since we're an organization that's been a virtual organization really since we started in the early days of the internet in 1993, it was really appealing to us to launch a project where we're making something together, but apart in our own ways. So we also wanted to celebrate the long history of fundraising through quilt making, which is a tradition that started in the early 1800s. So you've probably seen quilts like this. This is a signature quilt. Here's a close-up of it. And it was an especially popular type of quilt making as a fundraiser. So you would sell the chance to sign the quilt or have someone else inscribe the quilt with your name. For 10 cents or 25 cents, church groups often did this, but also women's groups. And some groups sold so many slots that they were able to fund an entire new building through the sale of signatures on a quilt or a raffle of a quilt. So this is an example of another quilt that was a fundraiser from the National Museum of American History, which was believed to have paid for the entire edition of a quilt in 1893. I think today we're very familiar with quilts as fundraisers, silent auctions, raffles, and also quilts as charitable work. But I think also quilting has a long history of being a community project. And most of our Quilt Alliance members don't live near where we live. They're all scattered across the world. But a block of the month project or a quilt along is something that we can do together. There's a lot of early history of women quilting together. We think of like quilting bees as a really delightful social experiment or a social experience, which it was. They were also designed for really hard work. They were often called work parties, and they were more than just a purely social event. They were about completing quilts. But we like to think of ours more as a birthday party. This is a clipping about one group of women who made a charitable quilt, and it goes into great detail, which is, I think, it's interesting if you read it, but this is from the 1880s. But I love this sentence that says, near the close of the afternoon, when all have arrived, for there will always be some tardy ones. And I think any of us that are in a group or guild, we might know that there is always someone coming in late, but we love them anyway. And I appreciate that even in the 1880s, this was the case. This is another reference of women quilting together in the early days of quilt clubs. And this mentions that the quilt club was composed of young women who are late in the habit of stealing their beau's hat lining while taking their promenades. So as you can see, quilting together, nothing new. And finally, I think block of the months are really not anything new. I tried to find the earliest reference to the word block of the month because I like to think this project fits in the long history of quilting. And I'll talk a little bit more about the earliest reference I could find, but I think they're also a descendant of serialized quilt patterns, which began in the 19-teens. Newspapers, you might have heard of the Kansas City Star, and dozens of other newspapers across the country began publishing just one quilt block at a time, once a week usually, or sometimes once a month. And some newspapers published the entire quilt pattern. Others just published a little teaser, like you can see here, and you would send off by mail to receive the entire pattern. So we won't be doing any mail for our block of the month, but some of them also offered a prize at the end for a completed quilt. So I really love this idea of hundreds of women across the country all working on the same blocks, using the fabrics that they had or that were available in their area. So as I mentioned, I tried to do, I'm also a librarian, so I tried to do a real search for the earliest mention of the words block of the month. And I found that the earliest I found was in 1983, though I'm pretty sure it predates that. But the practice of a block of the month, one block a month that's shared, really exploded with the advent of the internet and bloggers. This is a book from 1996, which I love this cover, called Free Stuff for Quilters on the Internet. And it has 9 pages of block of the month clubs to join. So, it's nothing new. So this is back to our block of the month. These are a few of the blocks we've already received, and they are so beautiful. We have a lot of things planned to celebrate our 30th anniversary, including some deep dives into our archive and some reflections about what an honor it is to have recorded 3 decades of quilter stories. But this project is just something we're really excited about, and it's a first for us, and we hope that you'll join if you'd like to sew along. We already shared the first block by Ricky Timms, and here's 3 examples that we've received so far. And if any of you else have made it, we'd love to see it. Send us an email or tag us on social media. But even if you sign up now, as I said, you'll still receive this first block and then 8 more until December. So even if you're not a traditional block-based quilter, I hope you'll mix and remix the blocks in any way you want, or just make the blocks you interest you, and we can't wait to see what you make. So I'm going to turn it over now to Laura Hopper, who's Quilt Alliance board president and hosting our block of the month. She's done a ton of work to make us able to tackle this project, and she's going to have a conversation with 2 of our block designers, Carole Lyles Shaw and Bonnie Hunter. I'm just going to say a little about both of them, but they probably need no introduction. Bonnie is passionate about quilting, focusing mainly on scrap quilts and the simple feeling of making do. Dedicated to continuing the tradition of quilting, Bonnie enjoys meeting with quilters, challenging quilters to break the rules, think outside the box, and find what brings them joy. Bonnie retired from the quilt teaching and lecture circuit in 2020 after the opening of her dream come true, Quiltville Inn, an 1884 Victorian house turned retreat center in southwestern Virginia. So welcome, Bonnie. And we also have Carole Lyles Shaw, who is an award-winning modern quilter, fiber artist, and workshop teacher. Her passion is to inspire quilters to explore the fun and creative freedom in making modern quilts. Carole teaches workshops to help quilters confidently and joyfully dive into modern quilting. And her students say, and I have been a student in one of her workshops, that they inspire them to let their creative voices shine. And finally, I'll just say our host, Laura, a little bit more about Laura, who's a quilter, writer, and curator who currently serves as our board co-president. And she also works as the creative operations manager for Susie Quilts, worked previously at Benzie Design and Craft Industry Alliance. She's also a past president of the Chicago Modern Quilt Guild, so some of you might be in the Chicago area, shout out, and a frequent collaborator in the quilt world. And she's also had her writing appear in numerous publications, including Quilt Folk, Modern Patchwork, and Curated Quilts. So I will let you all take it away. And we'll see if we can get Bonnie to unmute and share her camera. Yes, hooray. All right, fantastic. Thank you all so much for being here today and for helping us out with our first block of the month.
Yes, and thank you so much, Emma. That was a really interesting introduction.
Yeah.
I particularly love how you connected this to, a community quilt project that can be done virtually now. We can reach so many people and share this birthday party with so many people.
Yeah, it's exciting. I love thinking of it as a birthday party. I just want there to be some cake.
Maybe everyone can send us their favorite recipe when they turn in their block.
I like that idea. Yes. Okay, we'll add that to the list.
Great. Thank you so much. Well,
Yeah.
I'm so excited to chat with Carole and Bonnie today, 2 of the 9 designers for our block of the month. Thank you both so much for joining us today. I know, it's a delight to just see both of you in the same place. Talk to you together.
It's a lot of fun for me too. Thank you so much.
Well, I would like to start by asking both of you about block of the month projects or community quilting projects that you've been involved with previously. So Carole, I'd love to start with you. Tell us about some of your favorite community quilting memories.
Oh, well, when we moved from Maryland to Florida, of course, I co-founded a Modern Quilt Guild chapter here in Sarasota. We now have 2. We have a sister guild here too. But we, in both guilds, we will make a community quilt that we then raffle off or auction off to raise funds for the other charity quilt making that we do. And that project is always for the Modern Quilt Guild annual show, QuiltCon. And that has been a ton of fun. Sometimes I'm just making a block. That's my only involvement. Sometimes I've had a little bit more of a role in designing or cutting up the packets of fabric. But I have to tell you, it's always fun because, first of all, because of the way the funds are used. It's for, the community at large to make a lot of quilts to go on a lot of beds for people in need, or perhaps even in distress or have had a traumatic experience. But secondly, it really builds community in the guild. A lot of times, some of our newest members make blocks and they bring them in and everybody goes, ooh, ah, and they just feel so supported and they get to know other people sewing the top together. So I just love joint projects. We're now able to do them in person, so that's also great. But we did it virtually a little bit too. So
I think a lot of people can really connect to that story. I know in my guild, when you said sometimes I cut the fabric, sometimes I put packets together, there's so many steps when you're doing a quilt that way with people. And I love your connection to what Emma told us about too, that a lot of these community quilt projects were used for fundraising too. And that's sort of where we came up with this idea. How can we get more friends for the Quilt Alliance, but also do something really fun together? Yeah, I love that. And now, Bonnie, you've led a lot of these types of projects.
How much time do we have?
Do you know how many you've done?
A lot. I don't keep count. It's like people say, how many pieces are in this quilt? I'm not a piece counter. I just sew till it's done, worry about the piece count later. But the first community sewing that really happened in my life that affected me, and I know Carole will understand this because she's moved too, and you move from somewhere where you know everybody to a place where you don't know anybody. And the best thing that you can do to find your home is to get involved. And with quilters, that means sometimes getting together, cutting fabric, some cut, some sew, some press, some quilt, some bind. We had just moved from Texas to South Carolina about the same time that Hurricane Katrina hit.
Oh,
and I was a new member of the guild, and the calls were coming from everywhere. We need to send quilts. We need to send quilts. This is what we do. We're quilters. And I remember being very involved with that.
And as a new member of the guild, I also remember local sew-alongs that we did. I lived in Columbia, South Carolina area for about 5 years. Just as Abby, the previous Charity Quilt Guild person, was moving to Germany. So I stepped into her shoes and inherited all of the guild stash in boxes and tubs. And what are we going to do with this? So I remember coming up with some really simple patterns and doing all the fabric cutting and making kits, and then having the guild get together for a potluck sew day. And it was just that. It was, some would sew, some would subcut, some would press, some would put borders on. And we had different organizations that quilts went to, but the one that spoke the most to me personally was a place called the Children's Garden. And it was a daycare preschool for the children of homeless parents or people who were unhoused at the time. And it made such a huge difference that pretty soon, not only were we doing quilts, but we were putting out things of the month that we could collect. Like 1 month it would be peanut butter, the next month would be socks, the next month would be wet wipes, the next month would be diapers, or things like that. And I think that we really find our love of a community when we serve it. And that's what quilting does. So now in the internet age, and now that I am where I am here, with a busy retreat center and everything, and really not a guild that I'm part of right now, because they meet on Thursday mornings, and I've got retreaters showing up Thursday mornings. But we can do internet sew-alongs just as well. One of the ones that really touched my heart was when we did the Hearts of Hope sew-along for Ukraine when they were first infringed upon.
Yeah.
We could say that. And the number of people around the world who sewed that with me step by step, week by week, to make their quilts out of their own fabrics, and then to see where those quilts were donated and who received those quilts, and having those emails come and the posts with the hashtag on them showing up on Facebook, on Instagram, on whatever. It was amazing. You might feel like you're alone in your basement studio, and that what you are doing doesn't make a difference. But when you see how far it goes, it makes a difference. Every person joining in makes a difference.
Yeah. And, I think that is, even just for a block of the month that doesn't have a cause like that, I think that connection that you're talking about, if you feel like you're sewing by yourself, in your basement, just being able to know that you're sewing the same thing as somebody else, you're going to get to see the difference in what they've made. Very interesting.
Exactly. And it makes you feel connected to the quilt world as a whole, even though geographically we may be miles and miles and countries apart. It's a connection. And I think that's really important for us as human beings. We need that connection.
Mm-hmm. And as quilters, quilting can feel like an isolating endeavor sometimes, because you generally, in today's age, we're not often going off to help each other at work parties.
Yeah, right.
We're very often just sitting, right here by myself. So especially if you're not able to go to a guild, it's such a great way to get involved with a virtual community. Yeah. Have you found that a big virtual community has grown because of your sew-alongs, Bonnie?
It's I have seen it. And what's really kind of weird, I have my own Facebook group and stuff like that, but what really made me go, oh wow, was when I would look on Facebook to see what other groups had started their own personal group of their own little circle of friends doing the same thing that we're doing in their own way. And it's like, wow. So yeah, I love that. I love seeing people gather together wherever they are, doing it however they can do it, and working on something together, whether it's a block of the month or a unit of the week or a quilt of the year, or however you want to do it. Yeah, it's wonderful.
Yes, I love that. Now, we at the Quilt Alliance, we've been working behind the scenes for a very long time on this project. And one of the very first things that we did was we came up with a wish list of people who we wanted to collaborate with. And the two of you were two of the designers on our first wish list. We wanted both of you to participate in
Oh,
this.
yay.
We just adore your work. And I think even just between the two of you and even looking at the background quilts behind you, which are both gorgeous, but both different, that was one thing that we wanted this quilt to be. We wanted to create something that could have some cohesion through color, but show the variety of designers that are working today. And so we were so happy when the two of you both said yes. So I'd love to hear a little bit from the both of you about what felt intriguing about this project. What made you think, yes, I want to be involved with this? Let's start with Carole.
First of all, I really admire the work that the Quilt Alliance is doing and its partner groups like SAQA, the Quilt Museum, etc. All the partners through the years. So when you reached out to me, I thought, I said I was going to stop designing blocks, but I'll do this one.
Oh, thank you. Thanks for breaking your rule for us.
Yes. But and I was also surprised, frankly, because I don't do a lot of pure block based stuff. Kind of like Zach, we're improvers, improvisers.
Yeah.
But I was intrigued by the thought of a quilt that would be so inclusive in terms of the diversity of styles, and that people could go wherever they went with selecting their fabrics and so forth. And I think that also really mirrors the inclusivity that the Quilt Alliance has really been working very hard, very intentionally to get all the voices in the room. And it's really so important that we don't get into those conversations like used to happen in the old days. Well, this is better than that, and this is the right way, and this is the wrong way, and blah, blah, all that nonsense.
Just say no to the quilt police. They're
Yeah,
self-appointed.
and it's like, no, there's no, either or, right, wrong here.
Yeah.
It's all of the above.
Yes.
Just take your choice. So that's a long answer to your question, but
I love it.
and the other part for me
tearing
was
up a little bit.
well, and the other part for me that when I thought about it, actually later, it was in the back of my mind, but later, that block of the month, that kind of sew along with different types of blocks, like what you all have put together, is such an important skill builder. And because of the horrible event that we all made us all stay home, not all of us, all but the essential workers stayed home. They still went to work, keeping the lights on for all of us.
Yeah.
But there are a lot of new sewers now, a lot of new quilters, and anything that expands their perception of what's out there, the different styles, it's all good. It's education in a very gentle way. And I think that's just so wonderful in terms of this project.
Yes.
Honey, what about you? What do you think?
Well, let me pop in real quick, because I want to say, Carole, you really hit the nail on the head. And one of the things that the people watching don't know is that we did give you a designer brief, but it was so tiny. It was basically no rules at all. We told you a block size and a number of colors.
Yeah.
And we asked you to tell a story with your block too. And that was it. And it was because, like you said, what we wanted was to show the diversity of design styles, the diversity of ideas that exist within the quilt world. And I really appreciate that you got that right away. Yeah. Oh, Bonnie, how about you? What made you excited about this project?
Well, first of all, we all have so many blocks floating around in our head, block ideas. And there's never a way to put all the block ideas that we have, that we want to see in fabric, into full-size quilts by themselves. So when you said it's going to be a block of the month and we just need you to do one block, one 12-inch finished block, I thought, well, shoot, there's that one block idea. Now it has a place to live and I can let it go.
Yes.
But you know, the problem is that when you make that one block idea, then you start thinking of, well, what if I made 4 blocks? What if I made 9 blocks? Well, okay, what if I made this to fit my bed after all, but in different colors than I originally envisioned it in? And somehow I missed the message, or I must have skim read about there being a certain number of colors. I hope I didn't blow that.
No, you were perfect. If you skimmed it, I didn't know because you nailed it. You got the exact right number.
Nailed it.
You followed the instructions perfectly.
Yeah.
I love that. And one of the things I like about what you said too, Bonnie, is that we actually encourage people in one of the PDFs that you get when you join the block of the month. If you find one block that you really love, why not try making that block into its own quilts?
Yeah.
And we should even show an example of one block that's used repeated instead of, all 9 blocks or in addition to all 9 blocks. I also say, maybe make a pillow to go with it. Maybe they like the birthday girl block so much that they want to make a pillow to go with the birthday quilt.
Yeah.
Yeah, I love it. So how has collaborating with the Quilt Alliance on this block of the month differed from leading a project yourself? We'll start with you, Bonnie, because you've led so many of these.
I didn't have to think of the finish. I only had to think of the block. And seriously, that wasn't instantaneous. I said yes and went immediately to my fabric because yes, okay, I'm in, and everything else that was on the to-do list just got shoved aside, clear a space on the cutting table. And you know what? It was a really good palette cleanser. You have some big projects you're working on, big deadlines, whatever, just to set that aside for the day and take the time to make this one block. And that was it. It was a quick fix and a real energizer. So it was fun. I had a lot of fun.
That. Yeah. And Carole, I'm interested to hear from you because I know that you're planning to follow along with the
Yeah, that's what I said.
Yeah.
I did say that.
You're aspiring to follow.
Like some people, I'll be playing catch up over the year. Who knows? But I do intend to make as many as I can.
Yeah, great.
And I will be. I don't know. Maybe I'll use it as an additional fundraiser or something for the guild. I don't know, but we'll see if I finish it or how many blocks I finish. And I'm not going to beat myself up if I make 4 and it has real big borders and it's a nice baby quilt. I'll call it done.
Baby quilt or pillows.
Yes.
Or a wall hanging. Yeah.
Yes.
There's a lot of one of the things that we really try to support at the Quilt Alliance is just doing what you can and doing what you want. There's no right way, there's no wrong way. You can make this look exactly like it does on the cover of the quilt, or you can kind of do whatever you want. You can make it look scrappy, you can make it as big or as small, you can make as many blocks as you want, just like Carole said. Just be part of the party.
But I know one thing that I have decided is that I will be including at least one multicolor African print as one of my fabrics and possibly a second black and white print, but we'll see. We'll see what finally ends up on that table, right, Bonnie?
Absolutely. Absolutely.
That sounds beautiful. Yeah. So for me, I was a historian before I was a quilter. I worked in museums for 15 years before I started working in the quilt industry. So the value of what the Quilt Alliance does day to day was really apparent to me the instant that I became aware of this organization. I'd love to hear from the two of you about why you think the Quilt Alliance is an important part of this community, particularly to the people who you teach, right? Particularly to the everyday quilter who might be taking a workshop or doing a sew along with you, and maybe think that documenting their quilts isn't as important because they're just a home sewer, which is something that I've heard before. What do you think? Let's start with Carole.
Okay. one of the things that I really love about the Quilt Alliance is that you all are using today's technology to bring the stories live. I mean, we may be watching it on YouTube, but it was a live moment, and it's good production values. I mean, we can hear people, we can see them, and 100 years from now, people are going to be looking at this stuff. 200 years, there's going to be some young person 200 years from now writing their PhD dissertation on contemporary quilters of post-pandemic of COVID-19 or whatever,
Read that in 30 years.
Right. I've got a vision. My vision is long and big. But yeah, it breaks my heart. I mean, I can feel my heart just, when I hear, and it's usually a student or somebody in a lecture, listening to a lecture saying, well, I don't really need to put my name on my quilt because I'm just, it's just, and then they minimize. And I go, just stop talking. Your name is not anonymous. You have a name. And I wrote a blog post just giving people a couple of simple ways to make labels. Because most of us, if we don't have at least just a list of letters and numbers on our sewing machine, we have a friend who does. And, I make little simple labels like this. Just
that's cute. I like
and
that.
the date on a piece of fabric, and I stitch it into the binding and tack it down. It ends up smaller, obviously, than this.
Yeah.
For quilts that I'm giving to family now, because I was kind of guilty of that. I would forget but you can do this in 2 minutes, on your sewing machine or your friend's sewing machine. It doesn't have to be fancy embroidery. It's just a bunch of letters and that year. Yep. And if I want to put, Sarasota, Florida,
yeah,
I can put that there.
Good. A place is always good.
Yeah,
to see how far quilts travel.
You don't know who's going to be looking at that quilt after you're gone, right? And wonder.
After my sons sell them on eBay is what they are threatening.
Yes, that too. And saying, I wonder, was this an Aunt Carole quilt? Well, they'll know.
Yeah.
Yes. I love how approachable that tip is, right? Like, I actually was going to ask both of you for tips about documenting quilts. And I think starting simple is a really good tip because a lot of us aren't accustomed to making labeling part of our process. And even just starting with a name and a year gives people a lot more information.
Yeah.
Yeah, very simple. Now, Bonnie, it sounded like you have some thoughts about this too.
I do. I fell in love with antique quilts in the 80s and 90s when I was first getting started. And some of my first books were published by University Press, where it'd be like quilts of Kansas, quilts of Virginia, quilts of South Carolina, quilts of Georgia. And they would have just still black and white photos with the description of the maker and how she made this quilt and whatever. But that was all the documentation they had for each of those quilts.
Okay.
We have more now. And I'm sure that those people in those black and white photos didn't think that their quilts were worthy of documentation either, but they were. And I love knowing that this goes a step further than the printed page, that here we are, we're talking and we're moving, and they can hear our voices and see our body language and realize, 50 years from now, what a good time we had talking about our quilts, yes. Who we made it for, the little 3-minute videos that you do talking about those quilts. Those are so valuable. You just don't know if a great grandchild, 50, 60 years from now is going to find that and actually hear their grandma's voice and understand the story that was behind that quilt and things like that. I think it's just tremendously valuable. As far as labels go, my simple label is just like a 7-inch square pressed in half on the diagonal and tacked to the back of the quilt and sewn on 2 sides into the binding, and then the fold is just blind stitched down to the quilt back. And I usually just put the name of the quilt, whatever I've named it, my name, the year, and if there's room, the location. So it's nothing fancy. If I were going to gift that quilt later, I would probably put a second label on it. My niece is graduating high school next month. I need to hurry on that. So she'll probably get something. I'll put a second label on it and put it to her with any kind of sentiment and then sign it again. I think it's really important that somewhere, if you do a label that's large enough, to include your own signature in pen and ink, because it's something that a computer font can't duplicate. It's something that a embroidery machine can't do. And you might think that your handwriting is not that pretty, it's not that great, it's barely legible, because how often do we even sign checks anymore? We don't. But I think it's the one thing that really physically will connect people to something that's really uniquely individual about each and every one of us. None of our signatures are the same. We can't duplicate anybody else's signature. So I always try to remember to just sign my name, if nothing else. Sign my name with a fabric marker, because it's an identifier, and it's one of a kind.
Yes, what a wonderful personal touch that
Yeah.
is. Yeah, that's a really beautiful idea, especially if you're giving it as a gift too.
Yeah.
I know one of the things that what you said brought up for me, Bonnie, is that I've told this story to Quilt Alliance staff before, but I haven't told it on Textile Talk. But my mother passed away many years ago, and when I went and cleaned her home out, I found an oral history recording that she did
Oh, wow.
that I didn't know about. So she was in the military, and there was a Veterans Oral History Day at our public library in our town. I don't recall her ever telling me that she did this interview.
Wow.
But for me, I had to wait a while to see it. But for me, that was a gift that I didn't
That's priceless.
It's
Yeah.
absolutely priceless. And that kind of connection, as you say, like, who knows whose great grandchildren are going to find a Go Tell It video or a QSOS oral history. But the meaning, the personal meaning there is really just incredible. And it is part of why I care about the Quilt Alliance so much. And I love infusing that personal meaning into your labels too, that people will see that a hand made this.
Yeah.
That's
Yeah.
wonderful. I love starting small and getting practice. Like Carole said, I adore that. And then maybe build yourself up to the Bonnie ideas.
You can get labels made. You can get labels, just sew it right into the binding, and that's at least something. That's
Yeah.
at least something. But we've got so much at our fingertips, from your embroidery on your sewing machine to a simple fabric pen. There's a way to mark your quilt.
Yes, absolutely.
Yeah.
And I do want to draw everybody who's watching, I want to draw your attention to our chat box, because some people are sharing how they label their quilts in there.
Good.
And there's some really great tips that I'm seeing just even just skimming this. So add your tips into the chat box. Also add your questions into the Q&A if you have, especially documentation questions. That's a wonderful thing to ask us to talk more about. But don't miss the chat box right now, because there's a lot of really good ideas floating.
And somebody may have mentioned this in the chat, but when Bonnie was talking about writing on the fabric, my tip on that is use freezer paper, iron the fabric to the freezer paper, do your writing, mark off your edges that you don't want to write beyond, because writing on fabric that's just fabric is hard to do. Yes. But if you back it with a sheet of freezer paper, it's more stable. It's easier to physically write on.
Yes, that's a really good tip. I've heard some people use sandpaper too. Yes. I like the freezer paper method because I have I do a lot of freezer paper work. So I have rolls and rolls and rolls of it. So it's a lot easier for me to find than sandpaper around my house.
And you iron the fabric to the shiny side for people who've never done it, to the shiny side. But the sandpaper works fairly well too.
Yes. Very, very good tip. Now we still have a few minutes to go over a few questions, but one of the things that I don't want to miss asking both of you about is, what does quilting in a community mean to you? Quilting in a community in person versus online, or both too. It is such a meaningful thing as a quilter, and I'd love to get some of your thoughts on that. So let's start with Carole.
Well, I started learning to quilt in isolation when I lived in Baltimore. I did not know any quilters. I didn't even sew. I just wanted to make some gifts for my nieces and nephews. And then actually groups found me. I went to a quilt show and people found me and invited me in to a couple different groups. But my main community was and still is the African American Quilters of Baltimore. I am still a member, even though I live in Florida now. But that, I don't know, I was prepared to keep doing it on my own with books and whatever, but joining that community on so many levels. I mean, the friendships, the love, the real love. And it was a guild, is a guild that was completely open to any style or genre of quilt making. Not all guilds are that open,
Yes.
I have heard.
Yeah.
But AAQB has been and always, probably always will be, very open. So the thing that happened was that they taught me how to sew in a very loving but disciplined way. You will learn needle turn applique, and this is how you're going to learn it. And I am grateful because I didn't know what I was doing. But being in community is life-giving. The myth of, the artist who works in isolation, yeah, there's some of that, but most artists, most makers are making in some kind of community. Yeah. They're learning techniques, they're getting inspiration, they're debating things. The other thing I want to say, and this came out of an email I got from someone a while back about some challenges she was having in being a member of her guild. And a couple people have emailed me about that over the last couple of years, but my response is, you need multiple communities. You need multiple quilting connections. Yeah. I've got my art quilting buddies, and they are not, there's a little overlap, but they're not the same as my, diehard modern quilting buddies. And frankly, I have buddies who are like me culturally, who are African American quilters. We have some connections. So whatever the communities, plural, are that will feed your soul, support you, find them. Start one if you can't find one. You only need 2 people to be a community. Yes. But don't try to get all your needs met in one place. That's
great advice.
You don't need to do that, especially nowadays when most of us who don't live in rural areas have internet, or in a place like Florida where the internet goes out because there's a thunderstorm. But yeah, we've got virtual communities. And at first I didn't think virtual communities were as real and virtual friendships were as real, but I now know that to be completely untrue. Untrue. I have some really good friends and we've never been in the same place.
Yes. Yeah, that is the wonderful thing about being able to connect in this way now. And Carole, I just want to say I could listen to you talk about this for every day, forever.
No, you don't.
You've got some really gorgeous, meaningful things in that response. And I really appreciate that, especially that community is life-giving. I love that. I love that, you direct people to multiple communities too. I'm very inspired right now by what you said. Yeah, thank you for sharing your thoughts. And Bonnie, go ahead and follow that up.
How do you follow that up? What do you follow that up? So I'm thinking as she's speaking, and I'm nodding my head and going, yes, 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 1,000 times yes. I think that, we have different families in our lives. We've got the family that we're born to, and I didn't have quilters in the family I was born to. I have the family I was married into, my husband and 2 sons, no daughters. I have the quilting family that I choose that also becomes my family, both in person. And for me, it's a little bit different than most, because where I'm sitting right now in my studio is a building that's next door to my retreat center. And I have groups of 12 ladies that come almost on a weekly basis. That there's a group comes and they stay and they sew through the weekend, and you develop a friendship with them and you just love them to death. And then they leave, and then the next day the next group comes, and they were here last year too, and it's a new reunion of all of these inspiring people, and they're bringing their quilt finishes, and you're hearing their stories as they talk to one another and how they're connecting and how they're strengthening their friendships. And as a woman, I know there's a lot of men in quilting too, but I'm saying this as a woman who has a husband and 2 sons, and not a lot of female family around, that these women have become my family, and women need women, especially, I'm not leaving the men quilters out, that we need them too. But at this stage of our lives, I've taken a bigger step into my 60s. It was one thing to turn 60, but now I'm 61, pushing 61 and a half. It's like,
What is counting?
slow it down, please. But I've got friends going through, quilty friends, going through all kinds of situations, from they're losing parents, spouses are ill, children have crises of one kind or another. And it's the quilting that I see holding these groups together, and they bring me into their groups, and I feel part of that, and I feel whole because I am with a flock of women, as my husband calls it. But we need each other. As creatives, we need each other. We feed off each other. We bounce ideas off each other. Our eyes are opened because of what we see other people creating. Their creativity opens and strengthens our creativity, and nobody creates in a vacuum. So, if you're feeling like your life is a vacuum, don't wait for it to come to you. Get involved, and then you will form your own family unit of quilters outside of your personal family home. I mean, we can have many different kinds of families that we choose.
Yeah.
And this is what I choose. Quilters.
You followed it up beautifully.
Yes.
Way to go.
Yeah.
Way to go. What beautiful.
That family of choice piece really hit home.
Yeah.
Really hit home.
Beautiful comments from both of you. Another thing that I love, Bonnie, is the way that we can come together to quilt something together as a community, but we turn into community support for each other in a way that is incredibly meaningful. I know in my own journey, I had my daughter, who's about to be 3, which is unbelievable. But if you do that math, I had her right at the beginning of the pandemic.
Oh, my word.
It meant that we had to isolate after she was born, so we couldn't have anyone come and help us. I had a emergency C-section that I was recovering from. My daughter had medical problems that were unexpected and had to have surgery. And one of the things that saved me during that time, I can't even express to people how grateful I was for this, but one of the things that truly saved me is just a meal train that my guild started for me. So we didn't have to worry about food. And they couldn't come, but they would send delivery to our house, and just every day I got a meal from somebody. I know that there's one person from my guild on this call right now, Adamandia. I saw her pop up before. So hey, Adamandia, good to see you. But yeah, that kind of care that you can get from such a large group of people is so, it's hard to even describe how meaningful that can be.
It's a
At the
lifeline.
History of
Yeah, it's a
quilt
lifeline.
groups is, some of it in the Black community, a lot of the quilt groups were church-based.
Mhm.
So you had that double community, community inside the community. And I'm sure for other groups as well. But they were truly life-saving, someone in crisis, someone isolated. And hopefully this whole pandemic experience has helped us relearn the importance of intentionally creating our own communities of support systems. And we have, like you said, Bon, we got to go get it. You can't
Don't
wait for it to
come.
happen. You
No,
can't
don't
join
wait
a
for it to
guild
come
and
to
sit
you.
there
Yeah.
and wait for somebody to say, oh, Carole, come over here. They might think, well, she'll come when she's ready. And if I don't move and they don't move, I never will be part of it. I have the responsibility to get my needs met. If I need friendship, if I need help, if I need whatever, I need to move.
And if
towards
you need it, then there's somebody else that needs it. So be on the lookout for them.
Yes, that is right. I feel like we could do several other textile talks with this group of people just on this topic, but we do have to wrap up our conversation because it's almost 2:00. So I think Emma will be coming back on shortly.
Is she coming in?
She's coming. Here I am. That was just absolutely
Yay.
fantastic. I do feel like we could have gone on for a long time and done multiple textile talks, and I hope maybe we can more on this subject, because I think everyone it's intersected with all of our lives. And I just love what you said about just jumping in. Sometimes it's hard to remember, like, don't wait. Somebody asked, how do you start a quilting bee? And I think that the answer is just invite. You only need 2 people, and then you could get a third, and you just start reeling folks in, inviting them, and you can start small. So thank you so much. So we are really excited about our block of the month and about our little online community that we hope will form around these blocks, in any form that you make them, whether you make them true to the pattern or you use them as a jumping off point for something totally different. And I also hope that everyone on our call will think about what your block might be if you were a block of the month designer. If you were making a block inspired by your quilt story, what would it look like? This might be we might have to do this for our 31st birthday, but we are so thrilled. Yeah, we're planning ahead. We got to get through this first. Sorry, Laura. But thank you all for joining us, and we hope some of you will join us in this birthday celebration. You can visit quiltalliance.org/block of the month. And thanks again to our Textile Talk sponsors, who we'll hear from now. Thanks to you guys.
Thanks,
you, Laura. Thank you, Carole. Thank you, Bonnie. And thanks to all of you. Yeah.
Bye.